Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So, we are one day away from the 2022 midterms. We did the House prediction yesterday, we did the gubernatorial prediction yesterday, and now we are going to be releasing the final video before the midterms on this channel, which is going to be the final Senate map prediction for the 2022 midterms. Can Republicans retake the Senate? I've already filled out a handful of states that there's not really a whole lot of analysis that's worth adding. They're either going to be going safe red or safe blue by a decent margin without any stipulations. There are 14 states here that we're going to fill out, some of which will be by safe margins, that will determine the outcome of the Senate. Republicans lost their majority in 2020, or technically early 2021 with the Georgia runoffs. Now they're hoping to get it back and capitalize off of the unpopularity of the Biden administration, as well as the fact that Republicans have a lead in the generic congressional ballot by around 3 points or so. That's with some outlier polls in there that were conducted online. That's with a lot of undecideds that will likely come home into the Republican column. It's very possible we're going to see an R+4 national environment. 2020, for comparison, was a D+4 national environment. And it's also important to note that that is a swing to the right of 8 points. And a lot of these competitive Senate races take into consideration, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, some of which are more competitive than others. These are all in states that either narrowly went one way or the other in 2020, so we're likely going to see a massive shift to the right, which does help Republican prospects. But we're going to fill out this map, but first I have to tell you guys about redeaglepolitics.com. Make sure you guys sign up for my website. It is a great deal. You get it for just $5 a month. That's 16 cents a day. You get all my exclusive videos because not all of my videos get to make it onto the YouTube channel. You also get all of my exclusive articles that I've written as well for the newsletter, as well as my Discord server. It is worth it. That's 16 cents a day, $5 a month. That's a coffee per month. You could also support the channel and get something in return for it at shop.redeaglepolitics.com. where you guys can buy the merchandise. We have t-shirts, coffee mugs, we have posters, sweatshirts, tank tops, hoodies, etc. It is all there. And you guys can get some while supplies last because the store won't be up there forever. Shop.redeaglepolitics.com. The link will be in the pinned comment and the description down below. So, without further ado, I think it's time that we get started here. We're going to start off by filling out some of these safe red states that have not yet been filled out. We'll start off with the state of Alaska, which is only worth talking about because we don't know which Republican is going to end up winning it. In the primary, Lisa Murkowski handily appeared to be the favorite, even taking their ranked choice voting into account, whatever. But they have this top 4 primary system, which pits Republican against Republican, and then all the Democrats in the state are going to be coalescing behind the weaker Republican there, and Lisa Murkowski, sadly, probably is the favorite. We don't know what's going to happen. Polling has been mixed, but if the primary was any indication, Lisa Murkowski will end up surviving by, I don't know, 5 points or so when it's all said and done, give or take. So we're going to discuss Utah, and I've had a lot of people ask me questions about Utah. I don't believe it's that competitive. Mike Lee should get by over Evan McMuffin running as the independent by, in my opinion, over 10 points. He is an incumbent. McMullen had a horrible showing as well in 2016 in the state compared to what a lot of polls and pundits really anticipated would happen there. Mike Lee should get it done. He's not necessarily as unpopular in the state with Republican voters as Trump was in 2016, even among that whole Mormon voting bloc there. So he should get by. Iowa, Chuck Grassley, he should win easily. I mean, the Des Moines Register poll, for some reason, only has him up by like 12, but there are plenty of undecided voters. I'm thinking that he's going to win at the end of the day by close to 20 points or so. He is an electoral juggernaut, and his Democrat opponent is very weak and has sexual misconduct allegations that have been thrown his way. That's not a winning look there. So we're going to be now going to the state of Ohio. I'm ready to move this into the safe Republican column. At first, we were like, okay, maybe it's going to go for Vance by like 9 or so when the polls were like even, because typically the polls in Ohio vastly underestimate Republicans. Look at them back in 2016. They said that Donald Trump would end up winning the state by 2. He won the state by 8 and change. Then they said that Trump would win by 1. Even some accurate polls in other states like Emerson had Biden winning Ohio. And then Donald Trump ended up winning by the same margin he won by in 2016. The polls also had Mike DeWine losing in 2018, and we all know how that turned out. They overestimated Sherrod Brown as well. And currently in Ohio, you want to look at the polls in Ohio right now, they have J.D. Vance up by 8 points, and even some Democrat polls have him winning by 10 with no undecideds. Trafalgar has Vance up by 10. Even Trafalgar has underestimated Republicans by a few points in Ohio. I think that 10 points is about right. He could very well win by a little bit over that in the state of Ohio. He should be getting it done easily with no problem. So the last state that is in the safe column that is worth elaborating on is the state of Florida, which has been a razor-thin swing state in the past. Some may even say it's been immune to midterm waves, although I think that 2018 was kind of just a foreshadowing of how truly Republican the state is now and how weak the Florida Democrat apparatus is. And looking at the early vote in Florida, Republicans have a lead, and they're probably going to expand that lead on Election Day, but they have a lead of a ridiculous margin right now, over 300,000 votes. That's about 7%. If the election was held, already just with the electorate that's voted, Republicans probably would already be winning by a likely margin, which is absolutely huge. And looking at it by county, I mean, you could look at Miami-Dade County, for example, which has been the Democrat vote sink for decades now. But Republicans actually lead in Miami-Dade, and if you look at it in 2020, they vastly improved in Miami-Dade. You see that big red arrow there. I'm thinking that Miami-Dade is probably going to go red, might be even by a surprising margin to a lot of people. And as a result, I think that Florida is going to be safe red. It's funny, Miami-Dade's early vote is more Republican than the state at large's early vote was in 2020. That is astounding, my friends. That is absolutely astounding. So we will be going, I believe, to the likely states right now. We'll fill out the likely Democrat states first. We'll start off with the state of Washington, where this is going to be more competitive than your usual elections, especially federal elections in the state of Washington. But Washington is still the state of Washington. But if you look at polling, it's interesting here. Patty Murray's below 50% as an incumbent. Now, some of these polls are Republican-leaning pollsters, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're inaccurate because, I mean, a lot of them have better grades if you actually graded them properly in terms of their past accuracy than a lot of the legacy media polls, for example. But still, Murray's up by 3. I think I could see Smiley getting around 46% of the vote when it's all said and done, but Washington's still Washington. That's Seattle. That's Antifa right there. I don't think the math is necessarily going to be there for Smiley to defeat Murray, even though Smiley is running a decent campaign and Murray is not really that strong of a candidate. I'll keep it as likely D for now. Also, the primary was not necessarily the best showing for Republicans if they were actually going to win the state. Obviously, primary electorates are not the same as the electorates that we'll see on Election Day, and this is true, which is why I'm going to keep it as likely D. So now we're going to go to the state of Colorado. Republicans nominated Joe O'Dea as their nominee. And instead of trying to do what people like Christine Drazin, Glenn Youngkin, and Tiffany Smiley have done while trying to, for example, get the base on board, don't stab the base in the back, but also try and pivot into getting more independent voters on your side so you can win, he decided to double down, attack the base, say he would actively campaign against Donald Trump in 2024, and make all of his advertisements about how much he loves gay marriage and how much he loves codifying Roe v. Wade into law as a Republican. A lot of Republicans did not necessarily like that. I think that if you look at it, he's not going to get a lot of Dems on his side. A lot of those Dems are going to vote Democrat regardless if there's absolutely no difference between the two. And Republicans don't like the guy either because he stabbed the base in the back. You'll probably see a great share of voters leave their ballot blank. I'm thinking that this one is going to be likely Democrat. I think if Cory Gardner ran, if he was the Republican nominee, then maybe there would be a chance for a Republican victory if he actually ran a great campaign. But as of right now, we're going to be keeping this one as likely Democrat. So now let's move on to the likely Republican states, of which there are going to be 2. We will start off with the state of North Carolina. Ted Budd is the Republican nominee, fairly decent on the issues, and he currently leads the polls in North Carolina by 6 points. He's already at 50%. We know how polls have been in North Carolina. They've underestimated Republicans by a few points, especially in the Senate races there. Budd should get by no problem, probably by around 7 to 8 points or so. And another state that's going to go Republican by 7 to 8 points is none other than the Badger State, the state of Wisconsin. And we could look at the polls out of Wisconsin, and this also confirms that, like Ohio, the polls have historically been downright awful. And they had Donald Trump in 2016 losing the state by 7 points. He won it out of nowhere. In 2020, they had him losing by a greater margin. And then in the end result, it was within a point or so. So, honestly, looking at it, we know that polls underestimate Republicans in the state by a decent amount. They also underestimated Ron Johnson in 2016 by several points. He outperformed Donald Trump. He outperformed the aggregate by a decent margin. He's nearing 50% almost. He seems to be getting undecideds on board, if anything, because Republicans have the energy factor. And we know how bad polls in Wisconsin have been. I think he's going to take this by 7 to 8 points. I think he will do very well in the driftless area for a Republican running on an off year. And I think that he will do better than Trump in the WOW counties that tend to be more ancestrally Republican there. And he did better than Trump in them in 2016. So I'm thinking that Wisconsin is going to be likely Republican. So there's 5 states left. Democrats need to win 4 out of the remaining 5 states if they want to hold the Senate. Republicans, on the other hand, need to win just 2 of these states. Keep in mind, Kamala Harris is that tiebreaker in the Senate if it is 50-50 because she is the current vice president. So Republicans need 51 to win. Democrats can get by with just 50. And there are 5 Senate races here to go. We're going to start off with the state of New Hampshire. And it's interesting there. There's a lot of election day voting in New Hampshire. They don't have a whole lot of early voting that takes place there. So there's not a whole lot we know. It depends on turnout. But what we do know is Don Bolduc has been surging. Maggie Hassan is not that popular for an incumbent. Jeanne Shaheen in 2020, she was decently popular. She won. She outperformed Biden by like 5 to 10 points. Maggie Hassan, on the other hand, in 2016, even when she ran against Kelly Ayotte, it was 50-50 basically. Hassan had a very, very narrow victory in the state. It wasn't even called on election night. And that says something back then because it actually took them one night to count the votes pretty much. But either way, it's interesting. I think this one's going to go down the wire. I really do. Bolduc led in St. Aslam, which is the most accurate pollster in the state in 2020. He also has led a Trafalgar poll. He's down by just a couple in UNH. But either way, I think that Hassan has the upper hand here. Bolduc definitely has had a very impressive blitz, and I think he still may end up winning it when it's all said and done. I think this is going to take a while for it to get called, and he's doing better than a lot of people originally anticipated he would do. But still, I really think having that late primary and McConnell pulling out funds in the middle of October, even if some were put back, is probably going to make the difference here. I mean, you have a primary in September, divided primary field. Bolduc did a good job so far of getting everyone on board. I think he would win if the election was in December, but I mean, that late primary really is a killer. It still could be anybody's game, but my final prediction is going to be tilt Democrat. I think Hassan gets by a point or so. So we're going to be going down to the state of Pennsylvania. It is currently Mehmet Monday as this video is being recorded. And Dr. Oz, let's look at the polls right here for Pennsylvania. And you could see this right here. Dr. Oz leads by just a hair. And given how past Pennsylvania polling has been, that's a good thing for Dr. Oz. And that says something. He's gotten the base on board, as I said he would do. Fetterman's ceiling, he's polling below what I said his ceiling would be. And you have a couple outlier polls like Marist and USA Today that probably are not going to age very well. And Oz is leading some polls that are not even included in this aggregate. And you're looking at this right here, and you compare it to the past polling trajectory, Oz would be up by around 2 points or so. I think that Oz, after that debate especially, because you have to understand this, Pennsylvania, they have early voting, but a lot of Pennsylvania compared to other states like Arizona or Nevada tends to vote on election day, And Democrats cannibalized a lot of their rural votes already with the mail-in system. So honestly, I really believe that Oz has the upper hand here. I'm sticking to it. I'm sticking to my lean Republican projection as well. You look at the state of Pennsylvania. Fetterman, his far-left policies on crime, he's been hit very hard for them. That really isn't something that's boded too well for him. And the guy cannot string together a coherent sentence. He makes Biden seem like a genius by comparison, the best public speaker of all time. And a lot of people watch that debate. Sometimes people say debates don't matter for things if they're not at the presidential level, but polls have shown that a majority of voters have seen that debate, probably more than that have seen the highlights. And there's a path for Oz. I think Oz will get in line with Trump and Mastriano in the rural counties, and that's going to be enough for him to claim victory because he's going to be doing better than Donald Trump did in the Philadelphia suburbs. He'll probably break 20 in Philadelphia County. I could see him getting Chester County within 5. He kind of taps into that Toomey coalition a little bit. He'll probably win Bucks and Northampton, and I don't know about Lehigh. That could be interesting. He'd probably win Dauphin as well, which is where Harrisburg is. And overall, I think that Dr. Oz is going to end up winning by around 3 points or so when it's all said and done. Momentum continues. We will see Senator Dr. Oz become a reality. Speaking of celebrities that are running for office, we go down to the state of Georgia here. And Herschel Walker is the Republican nominee going up against the current incumbent Raphael Warnock. And in Georgia, we'll go to the polls in Georgia right here. So far, Walker leads the polls. He leads the polls by 0.6, and that is with a ridiculous outlier from Survey USA, which is a borderline illegitimate pollster, in my opinion, in the mix. So he definitely has the lead. Warnock being over 2.5 points below 50% as an incumbent is definitely a warning sign. And everything they said would hurt Walker. The scandal bounced off. The debate, he overperformed. And he's still leading the polls as of right now. The only question is really going to be, do you think Herschel Walker is going to win outright, or do you think this is going to a runoff? Either way, I anticipate that Herschel is going to get a plurality of the votes at least in the first round. I think that there is even a greater than 50% chance he avoids the runoff at this point. Because you think about the undecided voters, a lot of them are voting for Republicans down ballot. They're voting for Brian Kemp. They're voting for the Republican AG, etc. Down ballot, they're voting Republican. And Herschel Walker's getting those voters on board. And you look at the Georgia football win this past weekend, people are going to say that doesn't play a role. Well, I think it very well could sway some undecided voters when it's all said and done, because people are going to underestimate how big college football really is in the South, especially Georgia. So do keep that in mind there. I think Georgia's going to go red by give or take 2 points or so. I think Herschel may very well avoid a runoff as well in the process. So that's going to be red Georgia. Also, how's he going to do it? Looking at the map, I think he'll do better in the counties surrounding Atlanta than Trump because of turnout differentials, because it is a midterm year. We are seeing black turnout dip almost every day in the early vote there. And just doing 1% better or so than Donald Trump in the Atlanta area is going to be more than enough to guarantee his victory. So now we're going to go west. We have 2 states left. These are always like the last 2 we fill out because they're competitive states in the west. We usually start off on the east, go west. Arizona and Nevada. We're going to start off with the state of Arizona first, where Mark Kelly is barely leading the polls right here. Mark Kelly has a lead, not even of 1%. And he is an incumbent. He's polling below 50%. Blake Masters is polling right there with him at 48%. And this is saying something. Masters, initially, there were questions. People, obviously the neocons were saying he couldn't win. He's unelectable, this, that, and the other thing. And then you also had McConnell pulling funds. He didn't really get funding until October, but he did very well in the debate. He's doing very well down the stretch. He got the Mark Victor endorsement as well. He's on the ballot, but still getting the endorsement of somebody who could have taken 2 to 3% of the electorate away from him before the election is definitely a good thing. And keep in mind, polling in 2020 in the state for the Senate race, Mark Kelly was supposed to win by 6. He won by just 2 and change. So he's not really an overperformer in the polls. Meanwhile, as an incumbent being below 50, Masters approaching where he is right now, all the polls showing it as a tie, or even some have Masters in the lead. I'm thinking that Blake Masters is going to narrowly pull it off. And I know that Kerry Lake is probably going to win by more than him, and I know that Arizona is not a state that is immune to ticket splitting, But Masters and Lake have a lot in common with their coalitions and their policies and the type of Republican that they are. So I can't see there being a ridiculous amount of ticket splitting between those two. I think that Arizona is going to go Republican by around a point or so in favor of Blake Masters, even though on election night, he'll probably be trailing a lot. Just bear with us. Typically, that's how it goes in Arizona. Republicans gain when more votes are counted. It's one of those states, unlike what we see up in the Rust Belt there. And looking at the early vote in the state of Arizona, you could see this here. Republicans are just not even 22,000 down of the Democrats. And there are a lot of votes to be counted on election day that will skew more and more Republican. So do keep that in mind. Masters will likely win, in my opinion, at the end of the day, even if it's by a point or so. So there's one state left, the state of Nevada, which again has been that white whale for Republicans for quite some time, but the dam is breaking, and that dam in this case is the Hoover Dam. Technically, metaphorically, you will see a red wave flood in Nevada. Not actually, but metaphorically, yes. Catherine Cortez Masto, as an incumbent, cannot crack 45% in the polls. She can't do it. And this is absolutely true. And we could look at the early voting in the state of Nevada, which does register by party, by the way. And we will pull this up right here. Republicans trail the Democrats by just 10,000 votes or so, with a lot of votes to be counted on election day. I think that Nevada is going to go Republican. And even though polls in the past have, yes, underestimated the Democrats in the state, they were accurate in 2020 pretty much. Emerson, which has been the gold standard in the state, they have Laxalt up by 5, above 50%. Republicans have a good showing so far in early voting. They're winning nearly every poll. The polls that have Cortez Masto leading have her at around an average of 44% as an incumbent. That's not a good sign at all. I'm thinking that the state of Nevada is going to go Republican by a lean margin. I will say Laxalt by 4. Now, you have a very smug journalist who leans left in the state named John Ralston, who actually has a better track record at predicting Nevada than the polls, although he's gotten very lucky over the years. And he's saying that Lombardo will win, but Laxalt won't because Laxalt's a bad candidate. And a lot of liberals are taking this guy's word as gospel, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's a baseless prediction, especially because there's no evidence that Lombardo is outrunning Laxalt, even though I think they'll run about even. And Ralston has Lombardo favored to win for some reason. It is very puzzling why he's coming to that conclusion, but probably just to, kind of save face and appeal to his liberal audience at the same time. That's probably what it is in the state of Nevada. He also predicted Laxalt would lose in 2014, so he's not perfect in terms of his past predictions, and Laxalt won. He has a personal bias against Laxalt. Laxalt's going to win. And in terms of the county maps for Arizona and Nevada, I think Blake Masters is going to do well in a place like Yuma, where he does, speak on the issue of the border crisis quite a bit. He may do better in Pima than Trump did because that is his home county, and Maricopa is really the decider. He could still lose the county of Maricopa and win the state. I think that's a real possibility if he wins by a point or less, but we'll have to see. I think he's a great candidate for the exurbs, and he does have a really uniquely strong showing in a lot of polls among post-grads, which is interesting because they've been moving away from the Republicans, but maybe because he's a post-grad himself that they happen to see themselves in him. I don't know. And in terms of the county map in Nevada, it's all about Clark County. The early vote there for Dems is not where they should be. They keep moving the threshold down for some reason because they're coping. If this county is within 6 points or so, the state goes red no matter what. That's typically how it is, and Republicans have a decent showing so far in Reno. So I think that they are probably going to take the state of Nevada. This is the year it happens. You look at trends. You're not immune to trends. You're not. And they will come back to bite these Democrat wish casters in the rear end this year, especially of all years. But yep, this is the final Red Eagle Politics Senate map for the 2022 midterms. We have it right now at 53 for the Republicans, 47 for the Democrats. This has pretty much been the prediction for quite some time. We've, questioned New Hampshire and Arizona a little bit here and there, or if Georgia could go to a runoff. But as of right now, I think 53 to 47 is what we'll see. An upset is possible in New Hampshire. That would be an upset pick. Maybe I would bet a little bit on it, but I'm not necessarily going to say there's more than a 50% chance of it happening. So anyways, guys, Thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. And I will see you guys in my live stream tomorrow. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.